static-laced screams, and the sharp bark of plasma fire. At its end, the camera, shaky and half-shattered, angled toward a body. Human, unarmed, civilian, collapsed in the dust of an alien street, one hand outstretched as if shielding others, and then silence. Admiral Rhea Salix stood in the command deck of the TSV Retribution, watching it for the fourth time. The footage looped in her neural HUD, flickering like an open nerve. Her crew stood frozen behind her, officers, tacticians, AI liaisons, each holding their breath. They had all seen blood before. War had that cost. But this was different. The murdered civilian was a teacher, Callum Vance, 36, on a humanitarian mission to Jar 2 to help rebuild after the Spiral Wars. Not a soldier, not armed, just a man who believed the future could be better. He was also Rhea's younger brother. She didn't cry. Couldn't. Not here, not now. But her jaw was clenched so tightly it ached, her hands gripping the holotable with a tension that made the Durasteel groan. Her dark eyes, always calculating, now burned with something else. "They killed a human civilian," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "On a peace mission." Captain Viral, her XO, shifted uncomfortably. "We've already sent a request for clarification through diplomatic channels. The Jar claim it was a rogue element, a misunderstanding." Rhea turned slowly toward him. He was shot, execution style, in the middle of a marketplace, while distributing supplies to Jar children. Viral swallowed hard. "We have to wait for Senate guidance." Rhea straightened. Her voice was cold steel. "We don't wait. We respond." The silence on the bridge was palpable. No one challenged her. Everyone on that deck had seen the footage. Some recognized the name, knew Callum from his lectures or his viral vids on cross-species education. Others didn't, but they felt something ancient stir in them. It was the way he fell, the way the shooter stood over him, unflinching, as if a human life meant nothing. They had thought the war was over. They had hoped peace would last. But this was a spark, and every soul aboard the Retribution knew what came next. The Terran fleet didn't have an official unit for what came next, but every admiral had a black file, untraceable, unsanctioned, off the books. For Rhea, it was Vanguard Cell 7. They arrived within hours. Warrant Officer Kai Davarin led the team, a tactical savant with a face carved by war and a voice that brokered no debate. He wore battle armor like a second skin and had killed more enemies of Earth than any medal could summarize. Lieutenant Mira Jiang was the ghost in the machine. Tech, infiltration, disruption. If it had a system, she could break it. She rarely spoke, but when she did, people listened. Corporal Elias Cade was the wild card, dishonorably discharged twice, reinstated once by accident, and infamous for taking out an entire pirate ring with a modified food processor. He was reckless, brilliant, and borderline unhinged. And then there was Sarah Imani, young, idealistic, the dreamer of the group. A recent graduate from the Saul Defense Academy, she'd joined to build, not destroy. Callum Vance had been her teacher once. His belief in peace had lit a fire in her. She arrived with tears in her eyes, but a weapon in her hands. Rhea greeted them in the war room. No formalities, no time. "You're going in quiet," she said, pulling up a holomap of Jar 2. "No air support, no chatter, just this." She tapped the location. The exact spot Callum died. Mira scanned the data. "Insurgents? Sanctioned assassins," Rhea replied flatly. "Jar won't admit it, but they sent a message. I want one sent back." Kai nodded once. We make it loud. No, Rhea said. We make it personal. The surface of Jar the Second gleamed with peace treaties and platinum towers, but beneath it, in the shadow of the Solkari industrial district, the truth rotted. Black market weapons, slums they denied existed, anti-human propaganda painted on walls in fading neon ink. That's where Vanguard landed, under the veil of a solar flare masking orbital scans. Mira disabled surveillance in 10 seconds flat. Cade slipped past a patrol wearing a stolen vendor's apron. Kai mapped their ingress route before they even touched down. Sarah walked the same path Callum had taken, her boots stirring the same dust. She found the stall he'd worked from, still half standing, some papers scattered across the floor. Children's books, translations. She knelt there, closed her eyes, and for a moment the mission wasn't about vengeance, it was about remembrance. He died trying to teach them, she said softly. Cade stood beside her, uncharacteristically quiet. Then we teach him something back. The first compound hit was a weapons cache. The second held records, proving direct links between the assassins and high-level Jar officials. Mira copied everything. Kai made sure the building collapsed once they were done. In the third location, they found a child. Small, thin human eyes widened with terror. He wasn't Jar, a refugee, collateral. Sarah handed him her ration pack and whispered, "Stay quiet. Stay hidden." She left him with one of Callum's books. Hours later, the Retribution intercepted an encrypted message broadcast across unregulated Jar channels. A public leak. Footage of the execution. Jar military oversight. Intentional. A test, they said, to see if humanity had truly evolved past vengeance. The message went viral. In Terran space, riots broke out, not of chaos, but unity. Veterans returned to recruitment centers. Civilian ships offered aid to the fleet. News feeds were flooded with one image: Callum Vance, smiling, surrounded by Jar children. He believed in peace. They gave him war. The Senate convened in emergency session. For the first time in generations, there were no debates, no abstentions, just a vote, unanimous. Terran fleet mobilized. Jar II was given 3 days to surrender those responsible. They refused. And so the sky began to burn. Terran warships breached orbit in perfect formation. 3 carriers, 9 cruisers, and 2 dreadnoughts descending like silent titans through the atmosphere. No warnings, no parley, just the signal. A red pulse broadcast across every comm system, every screen, every neural implant synced to public networks. The message was only 4 words. You killed one of us. What followed wasn't war. It was precision vengeance, controlled fury, strategic annihilation. At 0500 hours Terran Standard, the orbital refineries feeding Jar's economy were turned to vapor. At 0512, the central hub of military communications blinked off the map, silently. No fireball, just gone. At 0530, the first wave of drop pods breached the upper crust, carrying soldiers, relief teams, and AI enforcers pre-programmed with one rule: do not harm civilians, but find every single person who ordered that strike. Inside one of those pods, Kai Devoran sat strapped in, helmet cradled in his lap. Across from him, Elias Cade grinned like a lunatic. You smell that? That's the smell of a reckoning, and protein rations. Mostly reckoning. Mira rolled her eyes and continued interfacing with the pod's targeting overlay. Our insertion point is 3 clicks south of Solkari's administrative tier. Heavy jamming, no drone coverage, we're blind until touchdown. Kai leaned forward. Mission parameters are unchanged. Locate the chain of command behind the civilian hit. Confirm identities. Extract or eliminate. No civilian casualties. Zero margin for error. Sarah's face was pale, but calm. Her fingers tightened around the grip of her rifle. "We're going into their capital?" "We're going into their heart," Kai corrected. The pod jolted, slammed through cloud and fire. The air screamed around them. Elias whooped like a kid on a roller coaster. Sarah closed her eyes and thought of Callum. Not how he died, but how he lived. The capital of Solkari had been engineered to dazzle. Multi-tiered districts layered in gleaming alloy and crystal, designed to look like the jar had evolved. But beneath the polished exterior, the rot festered. Sublevels ran deep with secrets, hidden bunkers, secret labs, black sites where political enemies were disappeared. That's where Vanguard dropped. The landing shook the street. Civilians scattered. Sirens rose in the distance. Kai was first out, rifle sweeping. No shots fired, no screams, just chaos around them and a mission ahead. Mira locked onto their destination, Vault District Theta, an unregistered section of the Ministry of Cultural Integration. Fancy name, ugly truth. Her scans lit up red. It's a black site. Holding cells. There's a command directorate operating from the lower floors. They're off-grid. Won't be in any public chain of command lists. Kai nodded. Then that's our target. The deeper they moved, the less polished things became. Clean lines gave way to rusted bulkheads and power lines patched with scrap. Jar guards in outdated armor barked orders at one another, clearly unprepared for what was coming. Mira hijacked their comms. Terran forces are everywhere. We're being overrun. Retreat to fallback points. Wait, what is that? They're not even using artillery. They're precision striking every damn power junction. Static. Collapse. Inside Theta, Vanguard moved like shadows. Elias took point, slipping past sensor arrays like a magician. Kai marked targets silently, his shots clean, lethal, final. Mira froze surveillance. Sarah, despite herself, found her rhythm. A calm center in a storm of fury. They reached the main command hall in 20 minutes. 6 Jar officials, 3 armed, 1 familiar. Commander Avradal, the officer who had signed off the test. Tall, six-eyed, draped in royal combat garb. He turned as the team entered, smug despite the alarms blaring around him. "So, they send assassins instead of diplomats," he sneered. Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "Number, we send justice. You humans claim to be better, more evolved, but you lash out like animals. You burn worlds because one of you died." Kai's tone was ice. "We don't burn worlds, just the people who think we won't." Avradal laughed. "And what? You'll execute me? Kill me in front of my aides?" "No," Sarah said, eyes blazing. "We're not like you. You killed a man who came to help you, who taught your children." Mira activated a data spike. The lights flickered. Footage of Callum appeared on the walls, speaking gently to Jar youth, laughing with locals, offering aid to wounded. The aides watched in stunned silence. Avradal's sneer faded. Elias stepped forward, flipping a small black case onto the table. It opened. Inside, a recording chip, authenticated, encrypted. "Confession," Elias said cheerfully. "Voluntarily signed or extracted the hard way. Your choice." Avradal snarled and lunged. He didn't get far. By the time Vanguard exfiltrated, the city was under Terran lockdown. No orbital bombardment, no civilian deaths, just clean, targeted strikes. Infrastructure left intact, hospitals untouched. But every warlord, assassin, and official who signed the death warrant of Callum Vance, gone, extracted, tried, or buried. From orbit, Admiral Rhea Salix watched the final report come through. She stood alone in her private chamber, staring down at Jar 2. Behind her, millions across the Terran Alliance were watching, praying, waiting. Rhea activated the comms. "This is Admiral Salix. Mission concluded. Justice rendered." She paused. Callum Vance was not a soldier. He was not a threat. He was a human being. And that was enough. Enough for them to kill him. She turned her gaze directly into the feed. "Let it be known. We do not seek war. But if you come for our civilians, our teachers, our healers, our children, we will respond. Fast, united, without hesitation." She ended the transmission. Across 1,000 worlds, it echoed. The central chamber on Veltraxis Prime buzzed with voices raised in concern, in fear, in outrage. Holographic avatars flickered into place from across the stars, representatives from 200 species, each projecting their own carefully polished form of authority. In the center, the Terran delegate stood alone. Ambassador Silas Corrin. Just a dark suit, a sharp mind, and the steady after. High Chancellor Fothrax of the Thalreen Coalition. Tsar sovereignty. Silas raised an eyebrow. "You mean the Tsar sovereign?" A different representative, this one from the Korith Sind. "You call it vengeance because you've forgotten what. Shift half a sector. You've emboldened your fringe elements. If our species retaliate, TSV retribution." Vanguard Cell 7 debriefed in silence. "To stand for something better." Cade leaned forward, suddenly serious. "What happens if they make us kneel?" The council. Only the Vensari abstained. An ancient race days to comply. Inside the retribution, Admiral Rhea Salix met with Silas Corrin, Vanguard Cell 7, and the Joint Defense Council. "I'll go," she said calmly. "Let them try to put me on trial. I want them to see my face while they do it." Kai stared at her. "Ma'am." "No," she said. "I gave the order. I made the call." Sarah stepped forward. "But you did what the council wouldn't, what they couldn't." Cade's tone was uncharacteristically dark. "They don't want justice. They want obedience." Rhea's voice was steady steel. "Then they'll learn, again, what humans do when we're told to kneel." Silas hesitated. "You're ready to become the spark for something bigger." She nodded. "I already am." The stars were quiet again. Not because the war had ended. There had never been one. Not because Earth had bent to the will of the Galactic Senate. It never did. But because the galaxy was listening, and for the first time in centuries, it was listening to us. The TSV Retribution drifted in low orbit over Earth, dark against the aurora-lit curve of the Pacific. Inside the warship, a ceremony unlike any other unfolded. Not with fanfare or banners, but with silence, respect, and the weight of shared history. Admiral Rhea Salix stood before the gathered assembly. Vanguard operatives, diplomats, aides, survivors. She wore the same uniform she'd worn when she ordered the strike. She hadn't changed a thing. Before her, a flag was folded. Not the banner of Earth, or the fleet, or even the United Colonies. It was a field medic's flag. Callum Vance's flag. Sarah stepped forward, hands shaking slightly, and placed the folded cloth into a stasis vault, which would be launched to orbit a Terran sanctuary moon. "Not a monument," she said quietly, voice thick. "A warning, and a reminder." Rhea nodded. "Every time they look up, they'll remember the day they learned what one human life is worth." The Galactic Council never formally apologized, but they did something far more telling. They rewrote the codes. Article 4.7 of the Council's Interplanetary Engagement Accord previously a bland paragraph about diplomatic immunity, now bore a name: the Vance Clause. It mandated immediate council intervention upon any proven civilian death caused by state actors. It outlined that any species violating humanitarian protections would lose their vote, their military funding, and their right to host council delegations. Unofficially, they called it the line, because humanity had drawn one, and no one wanted to see what happened when it was crossed again. Kai, Elias, Mira, and Sarah returned to Earth 3 weeks later. Quiet heroes, unofficial legends. There were no parades, just handshakes, quiet nods, and a deeper understanding in every gaze that met theirs. Sarah visited Callum's family alone. She didn't give them medals or summaries, just stories. Stories of his last day, of what he meant to the Jar children, of how he'd faced death not with fear, but with kindness, defiance, grace. Callum's mother cried. His father didn't say a word, just hugged her and whispered, "Thank you for bringing him home." Kai stood before the Terran assembly a month later and delivered a single sentence that would echo across the stars. "If we are monsters for defending the innocent, then let history remember us with claws bared." Elsewhere in the galaxy, a Korath commander quietly altered patrol routes to avoid Terran protectorates. A Vensari scholar published a thesis titled "Beneath the Führer: Humanity's Moral Calculus and the Future of Interstellar Ethics." A Jar school, once sterilized of foreign influence, added a new subject: Terran history. And in the underground networks of species who'd long feared their oppressors, a single, grainy image became a beacon. Vanguard Cell 7, walking through fire, faces unhidden, weapons lowered, mission complete. Beneath it, a caption scrawled in dozens of languages. They answered. So will we. Back on Earth, a new generation of children asked different questions. Not, "What is war?" but,